Welcome in everybody to another lesson. So today we're going to review how to add and subtract fractions. I know this may seem like a review from basic math, but it's very necessary because adding and subtracting fractions will continue to come up in further courses in algebra and even in calculus and all those. So it's very important to be able to grasp how to add and subtract fractions. So let's get started with our first example here. So let's say you have 3/5 plus 3/10. So yeah, you got 3/5 plus 3/10. Well, if we remember, to add or subtract fractions, you need to have a common denominator. You need to find the least common denominator. How you do that is you find the least common multiple of the two numbers that make up the denominator. You need to find the least common multiple of 5 and 10, which in this case would just be 10. So your least common denominator would be 10. Well, we have the 3/10. That's already got a denominator of 10. We don't have to do anything with that. But the 3/5, however, we need to convert that 5 into a denominator of 10. In order to convert that 5 into a 10, we got to multiply the denominator by 2. So 5 times 2 makes that 10, but what we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator, so 3 times 2 is 6. So what you would have is 6/10 plus 3/10. And now that you have the same denominator, you can go ahead and add these. So what you're going to do, the denominator stays the same, that stays 10. But you just add your numerator. So you'll add the 6 and 3, you'll get 9. And the answer to this would be 9/10. That's exactly what you get, is 9/10. Alright. Now we have 9/26 plus 3/13. So 9/26 plus 3/13. So again, the goal is get the denominators to be the same. You do that by finding the least common denominator, which is simply the least common multiple of the two denominators. Well, the least common multiple of 13 and 26 is definitely 26. So both denominators need to be 26. Well, your 9/26 is already good enough. It's already got a denominator 26. But we need to deal with that 3/13. We need to convert 13 into 26. In order to do that, you got to multiply the denominator by 2. You'll get 26. And then what you do, of course, to the denominator, you got to do to the numerator. You'll have to multiply the 3 times 2, which will make that 6. Now that we have the same denominator, we may add these. 9 plus 6 is 15. And then, of course, the denominator stays 26. And there's really no factors between 15 and 26 that cancel out, so it's already in simplest form. The answer is going to be 15/26. That's what you would get. All right. We got 5/7 plus negative 10/21. So we got 5/7 plus negative 10/21. Well, we know plus a negative is a negative, so now you would have 5/7 minus 10/21. Okay. Now what we have to do here, once again, find the least common denominator, which would be the least common multiple of 7 and 21. The least common multiple of 7 and 21 is in fact 21. So for the second part, the minus 10/21, you can leave that alone. It's already got a denominator of 21. However, the 5/7 we got to deal with. In order to convert 7 into 21, you got to multiply by 3, so you'll have 21 is your denominator. The numerator you got to multiply by 3 also. 5 times 3 is 15. So you have 15 21st minus 10 21st. Now you can do the subtraction. 15 minus 10 is 5. Then the denominator gets left alone. That's still 21. There's no common factors between 5 and 21 that'll cancel out, so it's already in simplest form. So the answer you would get is 5 21st. All right. We have 3/4 plus negative 5/8. So we got 3/4 plus negative 5/8. Okay. Well, let's start first. Let's remember plus a minus is a minus, so that we can rewrite that as 3/4 minus 5/8. That's completely fine. Now, in order to do the subtraction, we got to find the least common denominator between 4 and 8. So the least common multiple of 4 and 8 is, in fact, 8. So the minus 5/8, that's fine. It's already got the denominator we desire of 8. Now we need to convert that denominator of 4 into an 8. The only way to do that is to multiply by 2. So you'll get a denominator of 8. But that 3 you also got to multiply by 2 since you did it to the denominator. 3 times 2 is 6. So you're left with 6/8 minus 5/8. Now they have the same denominator, we can do the subtraction. So 6 minus 5, that's just 1. Denominator stays 8. And your answer is going to be 1/8. That's exactly what you get, is 1/8. All right. Now we have negative 1/2 plus 3/8. So we got negative 1/2 plus 3/8. Well, what you're going to have to do, of course, once again, you're going to have to find the least common denominator between 2 and 8, which is the least common multiple of 2 and 8. The least common multiple of 2 and 8 is 8. So that plus 3/8 can be left alone. We already got the denominator of 8 there, but we need to convert that denominator of 2 to an 8. In order to do that, you got to multiply by 4. So you'll have a denominator of 8. Now that negative 1, you have to multiply by 4 since you did it to the denominator. You get negative 4. So now we can go ahead and do the addition. What you have is negative 4/8 plus 3/8. Well, the negative 4 plus 3, that's negative 1. Denominator stays 8. So the answer for this is negative 1/8. That's exactly what you get, is negative 1/8. So unlike in basic math 1, when we were doing fractions, we didn't have negatives to deal with before. Now we do. Alright, let's see. We got negative 1/4 plus 3/7. Negative 1/4 plus 3/7. Well, we need to find again the least common denominator of 4 and 7. Which would mean finding the least common multiple of 4 and 7. I can tell you the least common multiple is going to be 28. It will definitely be 28. So, in this case, we got to convert both denominators. In order to convert 4 into 28, we got to multiply by 7. Which means we got to multiply the numerator by 7. That negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. Okay? Plus, then we have to convert the 7 into a 28, which means we got to multiply by 4. So you'll get a denominator of 28. You have to also multiply it 3 times 4 since you did it to the denominator. 3 times 4 is 12. Now that you have the same denominator, you can go ahead and add these up. So you have negative 7 plus 12. Well, that'd be positive 5. And your denominator would be 28. And 5/28, well, that happens to cancel no further, so the answer you would get is 5/28. If you're unsure about finding least common multiples, you can review the video from yesterday, or if you want a greater in-depth lesson on how to add and subtract fractions, go back to the Basic 1 playlist. I do have a more in-depth on that there. Today is more of just a review, but you can also work out, if you want to, on the side as we're doing these. You could pause the video, work out the least common multiple of the two denominator numbers, and that's how you would arrive at the numbers we're getting. I'm just doing this to save time. That's all. Alright, we have 8 1/2 plus 3 4/5. 8 1/2 plus 3 4/5. You have mixed numbers now. First thing I would do is I would convert these into improper fractions. So 8 1/2 is an improper fraction. You'll take 2 times 8, which is 16, plus 1 is 17. You'll have 17 halves. Plus, I would also convert that 3 4/5 into an improper fraction. So you'd have 5 times 3 is 15, plus 4 is 19. So you'd have 17 halves plus 19 fifths. Okay. Well, what I would do next is you want to find your least common denominator between 2 and 5, which would be 10. So we have to convert both of these into a denominator of 10. So in order to get from 2 to 10, you had to multiply by 5. 17 times 5 is 85. Plus, then you have to convert that 5 into a 10, you multiply by 2, which means you got to multiply 19 by 2, which gives you 38. Which 85 plus 38, that's going to be 123. So you'd have 123 over 10, which that's one acceptable answer, because 123 and 10 reduce no further. But if you want the answer as a mixed number, you got to convert this to a mixed number. So 10 goes into 123 12 times, because 120 divided by 10 is 12. Then you just have a remainder of 3, so it'd be 12 3/10. So either answer is acceptable. You'd have 123 over 10 or 12 3/10. Either answer is acceptable. All right. What do we got next? We have 7/8 plus 4 and 1/24. So yeah, we got 7/8 plus 4 and 1/24. First thing I would do is convert that mixed number into an improper fraction. You'll still have 7/8 plus, we now have to figure out 24 times 4 is 96, plus 1 is 97. You'll have 97/24. Now we got to figure out what the least common denominator between 8 and 24 is. Well, it just so happens it would be 24. You can leave the 97 alone. 97/24 can be left alone. It's already got a denominator of 24, but we got to convert that denominator of 8 into a 24. In order to do that, you multiply by 3. Whoops, I was starting to write 3. I need to write 24 because I multiplied by 3. Which means you got to multiply that numerator of 7 by 3. You'll get 21. Okay, so now you have the same denominator. You can go ahead and add these up. You'll have 21 plus 97, which would be 118 over 24, which is clear to me at least that we can reduce the 118 24ths, which they both have a common 2. That's going to give you 59 over 12. So therefore 59 twelfths, that doesn't reduce any further. That's one form of an acceptable answer, is 59 twelfths. However, you're going to want to have a mixed number form too. So 12 goes into 59 how many times? Well, it goes in 4 times. If you did it 5, it would equal 60. It's almost 5 times, but it's only 4. So 12 times 4 is 48. You have 11 left over, so it would be 4 and 11 twelfths. That's another acceptable answer you would get, is 4 and 11 twelfths. So 59 twelfths, 4 and 11 twelfths, either of those would be acceptable answers. Okay, what do we got? Okay. Negative 4 and 1/6 plus negative 7 and 11/18. Alright. Well, of course, let's start with that plus minus business. That's going to be minus, so it would be the same as negative 4 and 1/6 minus 7 and 11/18. So the first thing I would do, once again, go ahead and convert these into mixed number, into improper fractions. So 6 times 4 is 24 plus 1 is 25, so you'll have negative 25 6. You get negative 25 6 minus, alright, now we got to convert this bad boy. Where did I set my phone for my calculator? I don't know, but I tell you what, let's work that out on the side real quick since I've misplaced my phone for a minute. We have 18 times 7. 8 times 7 is 56. Yep, it'd be 126. So that would be 126 plus 11. That's 137 over 18. Alright, so you would get 137 over 18. Alright, so now we've converted these into improper fractions. Let's go ahead and we need to get the least common denominator between 6 and 18. Well, the least common denominator between 6 and 18 is 18. So that means we can leave the 137 over 18 alone. That's already got the denominator we seek. But we need to convert that 6 into 18. In order to do that, we got to multiply by 3, which means we got to do it to the numerator too. We also got to multiply by 3. Negative 25 times 3, that's negative 75. Now you got negative 75 eighteenths minus negative 137 eighteenths. Well, let's go ahead and do that math here real quick. Let's see. Let me do the math here since I forgot my calculator. 7 plus 5 is 12. 1 plus 3 is 4. Plus 7 is 11. 1 is 2. Alright, so we got negative 212 over 18. That's what we come up with, negative 212 over 18. Let me get my calculator, wherever it is. Here it is. It's just off the camera shot. Okay, I'm back. Let me see if it's 212, 18 going to that at all. Nope. 212 divided by 2, that's 106 over 9. That would leave, if you divide both by 2, you'll get negative 106 over 9. It's reduced somewhat. And yeah, so 106 over, yeah, it doesn't reduce any further. So one acceptable answer is negative 106 over 9, or what you can do is figure out how many times does 9 go into 106 to convert this to a mixed number. What you're going to want to do is convert this into a mixed number also. You'll have a negative. 9 goes into 106 11 times, so you have negative 11. Because 9 times 11 is 99, you'd have 7 left over, so you'll get negative 11 and 7/9 as a mixed number form of this answer. So negative 106 over 9 or negative 11 and 7/9 are both acceptable answers. All right. How about negative 10 and 2/3? We got negative 10 and 2/3 plus 9 and 7/12. So we got negative 10 and 2/3 plus 9 and 7/12. First thing I would do, once again, convert these mixed numbers into improper fractions. So 3 times 10 is 30 plus 2 is 32. You'll have negative 32/3. Get negative 32/3 plus, now we need to convert this 9 7/12 into an improper fraction. So 12 times 9 is 108 plus 7, that's 115. You have 115 over 12. Okay. What we have to do now, since we've converted these into improper fractions, is we need to get the least common denominator of 3 and 12, which in this case is just 12. So that means that 115 over 12 can be left alone. We got the desired denominator there. But that denominator of 3, in order to convert that into a 12, we got to multiply by 4. And then we need to get, that means we need to multiply at negative 32 times 4, since we did that to the denominator. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. 32 times 4, 128. So you'll have negative 128 over 12. So what you're left with is, yeah, you got negative 128 over 12 plus 115 over 12. Well, now they have the same denominator, we can add these. Negative 128 plus 115, that's going to be negative 13 over 12. So yes, that is one possible answer you could have there. You could leave it in the improper fraction form. You get negative 13 over 12. Or to convert it to a mixed number, figure out how many times 12 goes into 13. It goes in once, which will leave you with a remainder of 1. So you'll have negative 1 and 1/12. So either answer, negative 13/12 or negative 1 and 1/12, those are both acceptable answers. All right, simpler fractions. We have 5/8 minus 1/3. We got 5/8 minus 1/3. Well, we need to find the least common denominator of 8 and 3 in order to proceed. In this case, it's going to be 24. That would be the least common denominator, would be 24. So we need to convert, in the first fraction, we need to convert that 8 into a 24. We do so by multiplying by 3. Okay, now, which means we need to multiply the 5 by 3, which would give you 15. So you have 15 24ths minus, then you have to convert that 3 into a 24. In order to do that, you multiply by 8, which means you got to multiply that 1 by 8, which would just give you 8. So you'd have 15 24ths minus 8 24ths. Now you can do your subtraction since they have the same denominator. 15 minus 8, that's 7. So you would get 7 24ths. And it reduces no further, so your answer is going to be 7 24ths. Alright, there's 3 more I'd like to do, then I'll let you go for the day. I'd like to do 3 more. Because, yes, I believe doing these fractions is very important. So we have 7/8 minus negative 3/16. So we have, 7/8 minus negative 3/16. Well, let's deal with something right away. We have minus minus, that actually means plus. So you'd actually have 7/8 plus 3/16. Okay. Next thing we need to do now, since we've got it into the form we want, is we need to find the least common denominator between 8 and 16. In this case, that would just be 16. Which means the 3/16 can be left alone because it already has the denominator we're looking for. But that 7/8, however, the 8 needs to be converted into 16. In order to do that, we multiply by 2, which means you got to multiply the 7 by 2 in the numerator since you did it to the denominator. 7 times 2, that's 14. Okay, so now you're left with 14/16 plus 3/16. Since they have the same denominator, you can add them. It's 14 plus 3, that's 17. So one acceptable form you can write this in is the improper fraction of 17/16. That's one acceptable answer. Another way is to do the mixed number. Well, 16 goes into 17 how many times? One time. And then you'll have a remainder of 1 left over, and then the denominator is 16. So you also could write this as 1 and 1/16. Either answer would be acceptable. Yeah, this is definitely a good review. How to deal with fractions. Alright. Negative 2/5 minus 1/3. Negative 2/5 minus 1/3. Well, of course, find your least common denominator. The least common denominator, 5 and 3, that's going to be 15. So we have to multiply the 5 by 3 in order to make it a denominator of 15, which means you got to multiply that numerator of negative 2 by 3. You'll get negative 6 minus, okay, we need to convert that denominator of 3 into a 15. You got to multiply by 5, which means you got to multiply that 1 by 5. You get 5. Okay? So now you're left with negative 6/15 minus 5/15. You can now go ahead and do the subtraction since you have the same denominator. So negative 6 minus 5, that's negative 11. Denominator stays 15. You'll just get negative 11/15. That's all you can really do with this. You'll just get negative 11/15. That wasn't too bad of one. I got one more problem, and it's going to be a mixed number one. Yes, alright. 16 and 5/6 minus 12 and a third. So 16 and 5/6 minus 12 and 1/3. Okay. What you got to do again, first thing I would do, convert these mixed numbers into improper fractions. 16 times, that's 96 plus 5, all right, 101 over 6. So, yeah, 16 and 5/6 would be, if you do 6 times 16, that's 96 plus 5, that's 101 over 6. Minus, Okay, now we have 12 and 1/3. So to convert that to an improper fraction, 3 times 12 is 36 plus 1 is 37. So you'll have 101 over 6 minus 37 over 3. Now we've got these as improper fractions. We want to find the least common denominator between 3 and 6. In this case, it would be 6. So we can leave that 101/6 alone because it already is the denominator we want, but we need to convert that denominator of 3 in the second fraction to a 6. You do that by multiplying by 2. You'll get 6, which means you got to multiply the numerator by 2. 37 times 2 is 74. So now you have the same denominator of 6. You have 101 minus 74. Well, that's just going to be 27. So you'd have 27/6, which we know does reduce further. Both 27 and 6 have a common factor of 3, which would end up being 9/2. You would get 9/2. That is one acceptable answer. You get is 9/2. Or if you want to write this as a mixed number, figure out how many times is 2 going to 9. It goes in 4 times, because then 2 times 4 is 8. You have 9, so that's a remainder of 1. You'll have 4.5. The mixed number would be 4.5. That's exactly what you would get. So you'd either have 9/2 or 4.5, however you want to write your answer. So yeah, basically, this has just been a review of basic math. Always want to get that least common denominator to be able to solve your fractions. And if you have a mixed number, my suggestion is convert it to an improper fraction. And then it's also remembering, and if you're unsure how to convert mixed numbers into improper fractions, I do have lessons on that in Basic Math 1 as well. I go into it in more depth than that. So if you need it, there's no shame in it. Just please see it. It is there in the Basic Math 1 playlist. But this has just been more or less a review of stuff like that. That's why I didn't spend as much time on it. But the next lesson, we're going to solve some variable equations again that involve rational numbers. So this time we'll have variables with rational numbers coming up. So I hope everyone has a good day. Take care.